Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, July 7th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. This tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And we hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. Secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, please do so. Send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And we get a question or a comment from you through an email, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred. You can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. And you can also have the option to join us live if you'd like to. We are on Zoom. They have a whole host of phone numbers you can call. And you can call in on the phone number and then enter our meeting ID, which is 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. Or you can just open a browser window in zoom.us and enter that meeting ID number, and you can participate actively with us, which is something we cherish. We tremendously appreciate whenever anybody chooses to share their comments or questions with us, and we have plenty of time for that now. We have been going through the book by Christian Sundberg, which is titled A Walk in the Physical. And his book with his question and answer section is where we left off. And it has sparked me to do some other reading over the weekend, because this idea about being able to live in the question and appreciate this wide open space of questioning without demanding some kind of an instantaneous answer. So if you're trying to join us, I'm clicking in to let several other people in. Seems like they're having some difficulty joining, but so far so good. We had read a question about whether or not Source needs anything, and the answer is Source doesn't need anything. Source, the energy of creation, is just always giving, always expanding, always creating. And no ideas we have about that can contain the truth of life itself. And then the next question is, how could a person actually have any interest at all in returning to the physical? How could one get bored of being in heaven? And the answer, he writes, is, when the counter pressure of challenge is not available, the soul sometimes yearns for it again, so as to actually have the opportunity to grow. In other words, myriad very pleasant experiences are wonderful, but there's a certain something that only challenge can provide. The next question is, so many people seem to live terrible lives on Earth. For instance, there are so many children born into starvation, poverty, and war, or abusive situations. How could any soul want to choose to incarnate into such circumstances? Or is it that the soul has to do so and so? Christian writes, extreme experience yields extreme opportunity. The soul is bold and brave in its decisions to take on extreme challenges, because it knows the lasting expansion of joy and love that is possible through those challenges. Even though it knows those experiences may seem very hard at the time in the physical realm, it also knows the truth of what it always really is, which is far greater and far more enduring than those potentially crushing contexts. The soul knows that ultimately all is always well, and that it is immortal and unharmable, and that life on earth is but a limited sliver of experience. So it may choose to engage even a very challenging sliver. Even those very challenging experiences are not a has to kind of a situation, not something that is required, not required that you endure it. Those situations are a profound and precious opportunity to commit to a defined, even if sometimes painfully unrelenting, but that experience happens within a high density, high opportunity context. The next question is, what is the point of the veil of forgetfulness? Why is it necessary? And Christian writes, I remember knowing that the veil was basically necessary to be human for several reasons, all of which are very difficult to articulate from here. But I'll try to put it into crude language. The first point is, the veil allows us to have very specialized experience of creaturehood, and to make choices from this very deep and convincing perspective. In parentheses, he writes, to make choices as if we are only the human personality, which is the very crux of what makes this experience so valuable, close parentheses. In other words, we get to make choices almost completely from what is in front of us, even as we don't remember our higher nature. And that is a powerful opportunity for personal and collective expansion. The second point is the veil allows us to focus on the physical, to not get directly distracted by other realms or other portions of the self. The third point is the veil protects us from extremely painful homesickness, which might even cause complete physical dysfunction. The fourth point is the veil allows a clean slate each time, the ability to build up a precious new human personality that is free from certain old patterns and to play anew, though certain deeper patterns do carry over from lifetime to lifetime. The veil is thus additive to the higher self in that a fresh new personality can be experienced and added to what it already knows. The next question is, I've heard the physical universe described as a play and that we are just players on the stage. I've also heard about soul contracts and about how spirit seems to know how physical events will likely play out. Does this mean the play is scripted and there is no free will? Christian writes, there is always free will, always. And free will operates within a given defined context like Earth. The soul contract is more like a commitment to a path. And then once on that path, we make free will choices in every moment. In that lies the unpredictability and the value of the simulation. It is true that we can only choose from so many things, but within those things, we are completely free every moment to wield our intent as we see fit. And how we do that is very, very important. The asker might also be thinking that since events are, quote, seen beforehand, close quotes, and we see how they're likely to play out, that might imply there is no free will and that the play is scripted. But actually, it is just that spirit is very good at predicting the likelihood of billions upon billions of possible outcomes. Because it has, as you might say, all the data. And here he references Tom Campbell's My Big Toe reality model for this. But at any given time, that prediction is likelihood only, because outcome is not pre-scripted, it is free will based. The unique free will decisions of the personalities we become are exactly where the beauty, novelty, and creativity power center in, and that is precious. Does every spirit incarnate physically? And the answer here is no. There are many beings who never choose to incarnate into a physical reality like this one. Next question, does spiritual evolution have an endpoint? Do we ever stop the incarnation cycle? Christian writes, no and yes. The spirit ever grows and evolves toward greater heights of being, towards greater expression, and towards deeper joy and love. Meanwhile, the physical incarnation process is just one method of evolution available, and eventually a given soul may choose not to pursue it any further. So I don't, as I read that and I think about this question, it begs just the question of I think the disciples once were asking Yeshua, "Can you tell us when our end will come?" And the famous response was, "Wait a minute, do you think you found the beginning that now you're looking for the end?" So,
Dr. Tim,
yes,
could you read that very last one again?
this spiritual cycle of evolution, does it have an end point? And does the incarnation cycle ever stop? And he writes, no and yes, the spirit ever grows and evolves toward greater heights of being, capital B, being, and towards greater expression and towards deeper joy and love. That's what your spirit is always growing and evolving towards. Meanwhile, the physical incarnation process is just one method of evolution that's available, and eventually a given soul may choose not to pursue it any further.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean the end of its growth is there, right? It just may not pursue growth through multiple physical reincarnations after a certain point.
Christian Sundberg, the title says a walk in the physical, as if the physical is unique to this, whatever it is, this go round or those who choose it. Physical is just one kind of being. But I find when I picture beings who are not physical, I have a physical picture of them. I I end up having an image in my head. And so I was wondering, do they see? Do they taste? Do they have limbs? I know this is irrelevant in a way, but I think about the imagination shown in the physical creation that we have. Just endless varieties of all kinds of plants and beings and people and animals. And then I realized this is a very limited. I mean, the book title says A Walk in the Physical. All of the physical is just one kind of thing. I really can't imagine any other kind of thing. It always
Right,
ends up being
right. Yeah,
right.
but that's because you're coming from the physical.
Yeah. I've been wondering what Christian Sundberg, how his life has been different from anybody else's life because he came knowing some things, which he says he forgot and then remembered. Once he remembered, maybe this is a radio show question for him, what was it like to still be doing what he was doing, but suddenly have this other thing, that the knowledge that he came from somewhere else and had made a deal and broken that deal and made another deal and finally arrived in a physical body. And it wasn't, as my understanding is, it wasn't as ideal as the first incarnation, but he thought he better get to it. And I remember he said he felt badly for the young mother whose pregnancy was ended because he changed his mind. But I wonder what it's been like for him and what it's like now for him, whether he keeps getting more and more input from that other realm or realms. Anyway, I'm just going on. I don't really have a question you could probably answer.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to a question like that because it goes beyond what we can conjure up, right? So I pulled up, while you were talking, I pulled up this quote from Mozart that Guy Finley brings out in one or more of his talks. Mozart says, I have never written the music that was in my heart to write. Perhaps I shall never with this brain and these fingers, but I know that hereafter it will be written. When instead of these few inlets of the senses through which we now secure impressions from all without, and instead of these few tones of our little octave, there shall be an infinite score of harmonies, for I feel it, I am sure of it.
Wow, that is
This
so gorgeous.
this world of music, whose borders even now I have scarcely entered, is a reality, is immortal. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
So we can have experiences, but then if we don't have the senses to integrate them or make sense of them, they kind of float. So how many people do you know have had what they call a spiritual experience and they fumble for how to describe it to you because the words just don't, they just don't cut it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was like the struggle I had trying to come up with truly effective words for how lovely that vacation was. There just aren't any words for that. I mean, there's, paragraphs can be spoken, but they still don't even hint.
All right.
So,
Oh, Dr. Tim, I'm going to mute myself. Tim's
Okay.
asking me a question.
So we have plenty of time for other questions or comments, or I can return to the reading of the questions and answers from the book A Walk in the Physical. This next segment is titled Karma. And the question is karma a system of punishment or is karma self-imposed? And Christian writes, we are energetically accountable for all we've been and done. From the other side, we can see exactly who we are, who we have been, and we wish to expand our understanding and work through our own weaknesses and failures. Basically, we cannot escape what we are, so we choose to engage our own failings so as to evolve past them. The next question is, are we judged by our actions or our intent? And Christian writes, we judge or assess ourselves. While the product of our actions is important, our actual intent is of primary importance and is, quote, first, close quotes. The quality of our intent in all things is plainly seen. So our purity of heart or selfishness is plainly seen. In other words, there is no hiding the real reason for what we're doing, the real why behind the choices that we made. And that, quote, real why, close quotes, is what is important here. We are here so that our real why may become love rather than fear. If everything we do is because it's an extension of that loving energy, then we're on the right track. The question next posed is, do we end up in heaven or hell solely based on our actions or also our thoughts? If I have evil thoughts but never carry them out, would that have any impact? Here's how a Christian chooses to answer this. We are always unconditionally loved and accepted, always. Meanwhile, the, quote, energetic results, close quotes, that we may experience in other realities, or in this one, are a result not just of thoughts or actions, but also a result of our deepest intent. Our local thoughts are both biological and spiritual in origin, and ultimately, some layer of intent gave rise to both. The, quote, real why, close quotes, that we did, that what we think is important, the real why behind how we interacted with our internal and external environment, is the active ingredient. And from the other side, we have a chance to fully review how our whys, our reasons for doing things, or our own fearful and loving intent, was affected and affected every other being. We are responsible for ourselves and for how we affect others. And even as we are responsible, and even as that responsibility will lead us towards certain experiences in this reality or in others, we are ultimately always, always, always fully accepted and loved. And every choice we've ever made is understood from a place of profound knowing and wisdom. The next question. We are not our thoughts, right? So if we're not our thoughts, how can we be, quote, energetically responsible, close quotes, for our thoughts? And Christian writes, we are not our thoughts. We are the consciousness experiencing the thoughts. We are responsible for our intent, which is the primary movement of our being. Our intent is either love-based or fear-based, and intent gives rise to all sorts of forms, including thoughts and actions. Thoughts can also occur as a result of other factors, including genetic factors and biological factors, state of the nervous system. What we're responsible for is our intent, what arises from it, and how we utilize and interact with the forms that are in our experience, including our thoughts. To put it another way, intent operates even with and through thoughts, and even with and through the biological context which may give rise to them. So to put it another way, our intention operates through and with thoughts, and even with and through the biological context which may give rise to them. Intention is core, fundamental, essential. Then there's a question, it asks, what are the Akashic records? Christian writes, the data regarding every occurrence in our universe is recorded and maintained in what can be imagined as an immeasurably vast database in spirit. Data is maintained not for actualized choice making, but also for a huge number of unactualized outcomes. All of that can be reviewed and experienced directly as a tool for experience review and learning. The next question. When I view information within the records, it appears completely real and live. Is there free will choice making taking place in these recordings? And Christian writes, the Akashic records appear completely real because all data is maintained about all situations in our physical universe, both actualized situations and an incredible number that are unactualized. In other words, they never ended up happening, but they always could have happened. That includes all sensory data about a given environment and moment in time. Things like sight, sound, smell, feeling, and taste. And so when it is reviewed, it can appear completely real regarding whether it is free will choice or not that's taking place. Very broadly speaking, there are two levels of spirit interaction that we should consider. The first one is there is free will role participation, when a soul actually incarnates or plays a given being in a given live system. And then there is what we might call the second kind, is a dwelling experience, where a soul can experience a certain form as something that is more like a recorded movie than a novel free will experience. For instance, the quote, view, close quotes, a free will experience executed by another soul, or even, quote, view, close quotes, a context that was not actualized. So broadly speaking, the first is novel and the second is not. Accessing the data of the records is typically an example of the second one. So the question is, when I'm viewing information from the Akashic records, it seems like it's alive. It's an event. I'm watching a movie that's actually happening or something like that. And there are two levels of soul that they're talking about here, two levels of spirit. One with free will role participation, where a soul actively chooses to play a certain role in life. And then there's what we might call a dwelling experience, where a soul can experience a certain form as something that is more like a recorded movie. So you might sit down and re-experience a portion of your life or somebody else's life. Next question, soul contracts. Are soul contracts a real thing? Who would make a contract with a soul? And who would we make that contract with? Christian writes, the soul contract is basically an agreement and commitment to fulfill some role or attempt to integrate some experience. Doing so is a profound act of love and gift of service. In my pre-birth experience, I signed up for a certain path in this life. I don't think I'd call it a contract in the human sense of the word, but there was definitely a reverent agreement and a holy commitment to bind myself to a certain experience, to attempt a specific fear integration, and to be of, quote, energetic service, close quotes, in a certain way. Now, this is very hard to describe, though. From that perspective, we really love the opportunity to serve each other and the whole of all life in certain ways. Sometimes that service requires the gift of deep commitment. The next question is, can the soul contracts be changed or modified while we are in the physical? And Christian writes, yes, but that's done from the soul level, not from the level of the human personality or its ego. The next question, many near-death experiencers talk about a soul contract, but how does that reconcile with the principle of cause and effect, or karma? Why would contracts be needed if karma is self-regulates the challenges based on our previous learnings? And Christian writes, well, a soul contract is a commitment. Karma, as a term, is the natural cause and effect of who we are and who we were. In my own case, in a previous life, I was completely overtaken by a very deep fear, and because of that, ended up being very hurtful. I ended up being a very hurtful person in that life, and I caused damage to many others. Because of that karma, you might call it that energy that remained a part of what I have been, I voluntarily and excitedly chose to sign up for or to be committed to a very difficult experience this time around, with the intention that I could re-experience that fear. I did that so that I can now integrate it because I knew in doing so, I would be greatly contributing to personal and collective expansion. This is the expansion of being and of joy and of love.
Dr. Tim,
Yes.
it sounds as if he was trying to atone for having been so hurtful.
Well, it's about, words like that. Okay, karma, atonement, payback. These are the concepts that we have, right, at
Mhm.
our level. But what they're saying is the essence of it goes way beyond any concepts we have. It's not that you're being, because through all of this, you're always completely loved and accepted,
Yeah. Keep
right?
forgetting that part.
There's no amount of retribution that needs to be extracted, and you're perfect just the way you are at your essence.
You know what this reminds me of, and we've talked about this before, the fact that Hitler might have come as a person who made a contract, and maybe he made a deal somehow to be a certain kind of person on the planet to further something. On the other hand, what Christian is also saying is that he was hurtful because of fear that he had. And so I began to think, well, Hitler must have been terribly, terribly fearful too. This is just yarning away. I know there's no way we can know these things, but they just trigger thoughts.
Well, and the other thing is that there's a perspective from which uh, some of these deeper teachings say the only reason anybody does anything hurtful to somebody else is because they have an internal pain, fear, or sadness that they're
Mm,
not aware of how to deal with, to get everything they need or want without hurting anybody else. They're just not aware of it.
mm.
It can happen, but they're not aware of it. So the next question here is why is there pain and suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? And Christian writes, pain and suffering naturally occur in a free-willed system of form in which imperfect beings are making choices from fear. And these choices from fear are not in alignment with our native love and joy. The opportunity for choice making within a universe of form ultimately serves the expansion of lasting love and joy, even as temporary experiences of extreme pain are possible. Now, this doesn't make any sense, right? To our conscious logical mind, it seems like one of those. It's a paradox, it's a conundrum. But the idea is if it seems like it's a paradox, if it seems like it's a contradiction, what that means in that moment is I'm only seeing a tiny slice of all there is to be seen in this picture. If I could see all the picture and all the factors and the way they fit together, it would make perfect sense. So, how can leading to extreme pain end up expanding joy and love? Right? Because at its essence, true consciousness, your true nature, isn't constrained by the physical. I mean, the essence of it is I run out of words. How do you say it's of the physical and not of the physical. It's in the world, but not of the world. It's all of these different ways that people have tried to use the language, but it can't, the language can't contain the experience of the non-physical because language is of the physical. Like my thoughts right now are, they're fueled, they're informed, they're bouncing around because of all the reading we've done, because of all of the Guy Finley talks we've listened to and discussed, all of the Dr. Michael Ryce lectures we've listened to and discussed. But all of these thoughts are bouncing around in my head attached to language. It's all been pre-programmed. It's all limited to the physical. So when there's a question like, why is there pain and suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? I frequently have a follow-up question that, well, can you tell me that if I had the perfect answer to that question, how that would make a difference in your life in this next day or this next week? What is knowing the perfect answer to that question going to do for you? If you can help me figure out how your life might be different based on an answer going in this direction or that direction, then maybe we can come up with an answer for you that's useful. But if it's just because I just want to have a philosophical battle in my head and it's not going to lead to any significant change in my life, then I don't pursue those questions. Because essentially, the answer itself goes beyond what words can discuss and beyond what a physical experience can contain. Next question is, there's so much suffering in the world. Why does life need to be so hard? And Christian writes, there is no need to blame life. The physical universe is just a very rigorous, consistent, unyielding context. It is we who are imperfect enough to suffer deeply when we are applied against that rigorous context. Is it necessary that we suffer a physical incarnation in order to evolve? Christian writes, it is not that suffering is a necessary ingredient. It is that suffering is a natural consequence of the free-willed choice-making within a rigorous context. In parentheses, he writes, by beings who yet have a way to go in their evolution towards love, close parentheses. So the rigorous context is going to require this thing we call suffering. And many times we only evolve when we are pushed to do so through results, including painful results that arise from fearful choices. Then the next question is, how can love be a true superpower with so many terrible things in the world like child molestation, genocide, etc.? How can we possibly come to terms with the fact that these terrible things exist? So Christian writes, this question is far too broad to sufficiently speak to with a simple response. I will offer 8 brief comments in the hope that they may help just a little. So, how can love be the true power when there are so many horrible things happening? He writes, number 1, everything that's, quote, negative, close quotes, serves as a point of contrast to help establish the experientially known depths of what is positive. In other words, love can be better known forever when the spirit is actually known and experientially understood, this dream of separation from love. The second point, quote, negative, close quotes, experience, even anticipated, offers a counter-pressure opportunity for the spirit to exercise loving or brave choice-making through that moment. Put very crudely, if you can play the video game on a harder level of difficulty, you develop mastery more quickly and then can apply that mastery in other games, other realities, in other ways. Put another way, while it may not be apparent in the midst of suffering, our journey is extremely meaningful and important. It is important because real, lasting expansion and growth is possible when we successfully engage such an extremely challenging context. The third point he makes is, this is subtle and difficult to articulate. By experiencing challenge, even an anticipated challenge, the system ends up, quote, discovering novelty, close quotes, within itself, and then it adds potential. In other words, creative manifestation begets more creative manifestation. Put another way, even in destruction, more things become possible than may otherwise have been possible. Our world is us. This is point number 4. We have a long way to go to actualize and become the love that is native to our being. Our world is what we've done with our free will within our very challenging constraint set. We do have the power to change it. The fifth point, no matter what the circumstances, as consciousness, we always have the power to place our own meaning and interpretation on any given circumstance. In other words, as hard as this is to accept, there is no circumstance that is fundamentally charged. The sixth point, we are never, ever alone. Countless beings watch over and help us, even in the midst of difficult moments, and especially in the most difficult moments. And God's, or Source's, unconquerable love is always, always present, always upholds us, and always protects us, even as we wail and rage. The seventh point is, ultimately, we are all healed. Every single one of us is healed. Ultimately, there is no disease, no pain, there is no suffering. Those things are temporary experiences that we engage in as we dive deep. We dive deeply, we dive bravely into a universe of form and apparent separation. The eighth point he makes here is, for every pain in our world, there is a far greater love and light. And the love and light endures while the pain does not. Pain and damage are temporary. Joy, love, and bliss are our true enduring nature. Our human journey can be incredibly challenging as a road, yet even as the beauty of that road sometimes seems completely lost in the misery, please be reminded of the above and take heart and take hope. For every pain in our world, there is a far greater love and light. And the love and light endures while the pain does not. Pain and damage are temporary. Joy, love, and bliss are our enduring nature. Our human journey can be an incredibly challenging road. Yet, as the beauty of that road sometimes seems completely lost in the misery, please be reminded of this above statement and take heart and take hope. Every pain in our world, there is a far greater love and light. The next question is, if what created us and put us here was loving, why is existence here sometimes so horrible? Christian writes, we aren't created just prior to Earth experience. We exist long before it, and we choose purposefully to come and experience this context and this constraint set. We are not, quote, put here, close quotes, by someone else. This is a place that is very, quote, distant, close quotes, from source, at least vibrationally distant from source. And so we have a very significant amount of challenge potential here. That, quote, distance, close quotes, offers a significant opportunity for the expansion of being through loving choice making, even under fire, through the enduring conquering of fear. This place also offers the opportunity for the knowing of discrete perspectives and interpretations, each of which is ultimately valuable. While we know our immortal nature prior to coming, we understand that there is ultimately nothing to fear by signing up for this very real game, and we do so because the benefits outweigh the potential temporary hardships, etc. That is, what are seen from the local perspective as hardships. Very generally speaking, the reason the world can often be a mess is that we are not, quote, grown up, close quotes, enough to be able to actualize our true loving nature here while we're under these biological and physical constraints. We each have a lot of fear. We have a lot of room for personal and collective evolution. And that evolution is happening, even if it may seem to be slow from a given human being's single life perspective. So,
Dr. Tim,
yes.
I was thinking about how children who are too young to comprehend what's going on can come into the world, or when they're very small, experience a tremendous amount of suffering. And there are two redeeming thoughts that came to me about that. Number one, a child doesn't understand what is happening to the child, so it may not be suffering the way we think it might be suffering. It might be just in it, just in the experience, and maybe even thinking this is the way it should be, because it is. And also, the child doesn't remain a child. The child will grow, and when growing, may revisit the hard time, give it different definitions, see it in different ways, and we hope get the chance to understand what that was about. But Christian doesn't talk about the unknowing child, the child's experience. It just, when listening to him talk, it's as if he's talking about adults who are
Yeah,
interpreting.
but essentially, a lot of this talk is about consciousness and soul level. And consciousness and soul level doesn't happen at infant, toddler, first grader, second grader, third grader for humans. It happens incomprehensibly at other levels. right?
I don't
You're
understand what you
you're
said.
you're talking about a childlike innocence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that kind of childlike innocence only exists here after you come into the physical and you accept this amnesia.
Mm-hmm.
But the essence of who or what is going through whatever they're going through is an immortal soul. It's not a little kid. I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and I
Yeah.
have some memories of
Mm.
myself as a little kid,
Mm.
3, 5, 10 years old kind of thing. I have some memories bouncing around in my head. And it seems like these memories happened to me.
Yeah.
But the me that they seem to happen to had a much, much smaller body than the one I'm
Mm.
sitting here in now,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the me that it happened to didn't have a doctorate at the time,
Mm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't make any sense to me to talk about how is this landing for the child, because none of us are children in that way. We are consciousness. We are, fully mature soul having this physical experience. Is this making sense?
I appreciate the struggle. Not really. I mean, what you just said, that we are the soul having an experience. And in fact, we are the soul that was having the experience of being a child that can't interpret the experience and won't be doing that until the child gets older. So I shouldn't even put the question.
Well, but the thing is, it's see, it goes so far beyond words so quickly, and we're pretty much out of time. But essentially, I'm just saying that it goes beyond words because I am also this fully adult, but
Mm,
I was a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, and
mm.
but I'm not any of those things in isolation from all the others. So more again soon, I hope. Thank you for the
Okay.
comments and the
All
questions.
right.
I will
Thanks.
remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.